Marcel. I write a blog, Lesson on Gems, and today I'm going to do a tag video. Now, if you've been on my blog or seen any of my videos, you have probably noticed that I deal mostly in classical literature. Almost exclusively in classical literature. And I've defined classical literature as literature that is 60 years old. And the reason for that is that in a cultural historical sense, when you studied it as a subject, you talk about a generation as being 30 years. So that doesn't mean that you don't talk about the fact that generations is mother and father and stuff like that, but considering that children are born all the time, you sort of needed a fixed date to talk about a generation and the changes that happens for a generation, and those are 30 years. So 60 years is 2 generations. 2 generations is, to me, a classical book. So realizing that I deal mostly in, or exclusively in classical literature, I wanted to see if my reading habits were as homogeneous as that. So I wanted to do the 20th century reading tag created by wordsofareader. Link to the original video down below, of course. Now, the 20th century tag is about presenting one book per decade within the 1900s. So one published between 1900 and 1909, one published between 1910, 1919, and so forth. And the idea is that you pick the books from your bookshelf, so your existing bookshelf. And I was surprised that I actually managed to do this, but I wasn't really surprised that it was difficult. Now, one of the reasons why this might be difficult regarding the bookshelf is also that I have a tendency to throw away the books that I've read that I didn't like. But I did manage to pick one book per decade for the 20th century tag, so here is my 20th century tag. For between 1900s and 1909, Buddenbrooks by Thomas Mann, published in 1901. I have not read this, but this is absolutely a classic, and one of the reasons why Thomas Mann won the Nobel Prize in Literature when he won the Nobel Prize in Literature. For 1910 to 1919, it's The Wife of Sir Isaac Haram by H.G. Wells, published in 1914. I've not read this either. That's going to be what I say for most of these books, but this is going to be quite an interesting read because it's quite different from H.G. Wells' normal books. So this isn't science fiction in that sense. For 1920 to 1929, it's Chérie by Colette, published in 1920. And I've read this, and there is a review of this on my blog. For 1930 to 1939, it's Mother Courage and Her Children by Bertolt Brecht. Now, this is a play, and while it was first performed in 1941, it was actually written in 1939, and considering I struggled with finding anything else from the 1930s, this is my 1930s pick. For 1940 to 1949, it's Lake of the Dead by Endre Bjerke. This is a Norwegian writer, but it's been translated into English, and it was published in 1942. Published between 1950 and 1959, I pick Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin, published in 1956. And I've already made a video based on my thoughts on some aspects of this book. Between 1960 and 1969, I chose Black Snow by Michael Bulgakov. It was published in 1967. For 1970 to 1979, I chose Curtain, Poirot's Last Case, published in September 1975 by Agatha Christie. And spoilers, this was actually the first time a literary figure got an obituary in an English newspaper. And for the 80s and 90s, I chose Mort and Reaper Man by Terry Pratchett. And considering choosing one author for 2 decades might be a bit of a cop-out, I've also chosen The House of the Spirit by Isabel Allende for the 1980s and Possession, a Romance by S. Biat for the 1990s. So, if you've done this tag, please leave your links down below so I can go and watch them and get inspiration to read more contemporary literature. And remember, it's better to be a witty fool than a foolish wit.